everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Raven Light Holistic Healing, and welcome to Osprey as a Totem. Now, I have two Osprey videos, Osprey as a Totem and Osprey as a Spirit Guide. This here is the video that you want if you've always been drawn to Ospreys or have had a lot of experience with them. If Osprey are just suddenly showing up everywhere but you've never really had any real interest in them, then it's more than likely that it's a spirit guide, which is a temporary messenger here to help you with a specific issue rather than a lifelong teacher. In that case, you'd want to watch my video, Osprey as a Spirit Guide, what it means when you're seeing Osprey everywhere, which will be out soon if it isn't already. And remember, there is a complete alphabetized library of all my videos on my website, www.ravenlightholistic.healing.com, making it easy to see if I've made the video of greatest interest to you. Each of my videos takes a minimum of a month to thoroughly research and script, and the interpretations I provide are uniquely my own and based on a lifetime of experience in metaphysics. If you'd like to support me in making these free resources for you, consider becoming a channel member by clicking Join next to the subscribe button. If you can't see the Join button, which will happen for a number of reasons, I provide super easy directions on my website for how to make the Join button visible. Just go to the video description and the link to my site will be right there at the top. You can also use the brand new Super Thanks button below, the little heart with the dollar sign, if you'd like to show your love but don't want to commit to a monthly donation. And to all of you guys who already provide your support, thank you so much for being a huge part of helping me do what I love. So let's start with a point of clarification. A totem is a creature with which you resonate because it represents parts of yourself that need to be either accepted or developed, along with the unique challenges you experience in doing so. In some cases, you already recognize and easily display these qualities. In others, however, they are waiting to be developed and honored within you, and that is what your interest in Osprey, in this case, is intended to help you do. So for this reason, you may not even remotely feel like an Osprey person from the descriptions, and yet still be certain on some level that you are. Two, even if you already know that Osprey is one of your totems, not every quality is going to apply to you. So keep in mind that we all have more than one totem, as we're all far too complicated for one alone to represent all that we are and will experience. So you can be an Osprey person who is perhaps still heavy on fox qualities just now, as the bulk of your work at the moment is with fox. So try not to overthink it and just focus on what pieces of information inherently feel good for you right now. And I'd like to provide one other preliminary piece of clarification, mostly so you can sound super well read when you share this during your next cocktail party or TikTok video, or to break up an awkward conversational pause while waiting for the food to arrive at your next restaurant date. Osprey are often referred to as fish hawks, but while osprey and other raptors such as hawks, eagles, and harriers all belong to the order Accipitriformes, hawks and ospreys belong to different families. So hawks, eagles, and harriers are all part of the family Accipitridae, whereas osprey are the sole members of the family Pandionidae. So technically referring to them as a fish hawk is incorrect. And yeah, I had to practice saying the order and family names several times. Good luck before that date. So let's get started. Because the osprey's primary food source is fish, they breed along lakes, rivers, coastal marshes, and wetlands, choosing high, open places where they can defend their nest from land and air predators. They live high up in the air, but must enter the water to attain food. And so immediately we're talking about a creature whose qualities are a combination of those associated with air and those affiliated with water. With regard to air, at the forefront is anything to do with logic, thought, and communication. With water, we're talking about intuition, emotion, and imagination. Now, I always like to throw some astrology in to provide another level of interpretation for those who are familiar with it, but it is absolutely not necessary for you to know astrology to understand the rest of the video. So for those of you who are familiar with astrology but may perhaps not be experts, please do remember that astrological charts are so much more complicated than just what planet is in what sign. We're also looking at the house in which each planet is located and the relationships between each planet via the aspects, which are mathematical calculations in the form of degrees. There's also one's rising sign or ascendant to consider, along with other critical features such as the North Node. So I can't tell you how many people tell me they don't have such and such in their chart, only for me to see in their chart that their North Node is in the opposite sign, indicating that actually they do. So, for our purposes today, I'm going to be speaking primarily about Libra and Cancer. If you can't find evidence of either in your chart, and don't forget to look at the 7th and 4th houses, which are ruled by Libra and Cancer respectively, you might wish to have an expert take a look. If you don't have Libra and Cancer energies, you might have other water and air combinations, so Gemini or Aquarius, and Pisces or Scorpio. These are just less likely. So, in order to feed themselves, osprey must rely upon a perfect blending of aerial and water adaptations. And to understand how the osprey person moves through their lives and how they best nourish themselves, we need to first examine how the osprey hunts. Unlike many other raptors which hunt from a perch, osprey hunt in flight. They soar over areas of shallower water and using their excellent eyesight to spot a suitable fish near the surface, they hover above it and then dive at speeds of up to 77 miles per hour. At the last second before hitting the water, they swing their legs forward and bend their wings back so that their feet hit the water first. The osprey's legs are long and sparsely feathered, allowing them to plunge deeply and effortlessly into the water. Their toes, which are all the same length and which are sharply taloned, dive into that fish and snap shut in 2/100ths of a second. In addition to the cage created by those talons, each foot features spiny pads called spicules, which have a sandpaper-like texture that essentially locks to that wiggling fish like Velcro. And they have reversed scales on their legs, which act like barbs to further hold the fish in place. Sometimes the bird winds up submersing itself completely under the water, and then it must use its strong wings to lift itself out again and into the air. This is also aided by dense, oily plumage that sheds water, and nasal valves which close to prevent water from entering the nostrils. Even more impressive, ospreys have an outer toe that's reversible, and I thought this was pretty cool. Once they're in flight, they will use that toe to reposition the fish so that it is head first, which cuts down on drag. It's really the osprey's exceptionally high success rate that speaks to its perfection as a hunter. In ideal conditions, they will catch a fish on 75% of their dives. So compare that to tigers, who are only successful an average of 10% of their attempts to catch prey, or other raptors, such as the golden eagle, which only succeeds an average of 25 or 20% of the time, and Cooper's hawks, which succeed an average of 27% of the time. Osprey people are above all efficient, and they're also pragmatic, meaning that they aren't attached to doing things a certain way just because that's how they've always been done. Though they are adapted to hunt fish, if there aren't enough fish, osprey can capture and eat small land animals. This makes osprey people enormously flexible in their thinking and problem solving, and it gives them the ability to do many different things well. However, it can also mean that sometimes they are a little too flexible. Rather than determining a precise course of action and going for it, they can confuse themselves with too many possibilities and then question themselves into paralysis. We're talking about Libra and their famous analysis paralysis here. They're so concerned about examining every single option and weighing it to determine which is the most correct that they never commit to a course and get moving at all. And so one of the things that Osprey teaches is how to, quote, find your footing or jump in with both feet, as it were, to trust that you intuitively know the best course of action and that you can trust yourself to follow it. And so those marvelous analytical powers are used to refine the selected course of action and then act on it, not to constantly question it with the result that you don't take action at all. With their emphasis on the feet and legs, Osprey is all about joy and confidence in one's direction. Trouble with our feet and legs usually indicates that we're experiencing emotional issues to do with both, quote, having a leg to stand on. The body loves metaphor. So having a source of support and forward momentum in life. Folks who deal with plantar fasciitis tend to feel as though their family or job isn't sufficiently supporting them or is flat out holding them back, and so they can't move forward with joy. People with hip issues usually feel as though a burdensome situation will never resolve, so think of forever carrying a baby on your hip that demands attention. Knee issues tend to mean that we feel that we are on our knees in submission to a person or situation who has control over us and whom we don't trust to have our best interests at heart. And so because of them, our future feels uncertain. So Osprey have these reversible outer toes. And when we have trouble with our big toes, our body is telling us that we are confused about our direction in life, that we're not really sure where we're going. This is often because we do know deep down what we really want, but we're unable to let ourselves recognize and or honor that desire for a million reasons. First among them, old limiting beliefs about money and security, a lack of perceived deservedness of a happy life, and self-imposed responsibilities, which would have to be surrendered if we were going to change track and pursue what we really wanted. Whichever direction we're moving, we're going that way only because we must, and so we inherently know that we're going in the wrong direction, no matter how many times we've told ourselves it's the right one. The toes also have to do with details. When we're angry about details which we perceive as hindering our ability to do what we want and to get where we want to go, we'll tend to stub or break our toes. Sometimes these details are people. We can't do XYZ because we have kids, or our spouse needs us, or our parents need us. Sometimes it's the boss that's loading us down with too much work. Sometimes it's the homeowners association that won't let you build the addition to your house that you wanted. Other times, these details are perceptions about ourselves and our lives. So we think our own specific flaws are holding us back, or certain past failures are affecting our future. And so we're angry with ourselves. We feel that it's our fault, that we're not where we want to be. None of these things ultimately matters. The universe has a marvelous way of working around even the most seemingly impossible circumstances, but we're convinced that they do, and that they're what stand between us and happiness. So here, Osprey teaches us to courageously see and accept what we want, to bravely make the decision to pursue it, and then to hold on to it as tightly as the osprey does his fish, understanding that this course is of vital importance to our souls. And the way in which Osprey will tend to do this is to help you navigate through situation after situation in which you feel stuck or fearful of moving towards something that your heart knows would make you happy. You'll learn to examine what you perceive as the details of your situation and begin to recognize which ones represent personal, internal, limiting beliefs about yourself and the nature of life, and so can be bypassed, and which are genuine realities of the situation which must be accepted and surrendered to, knowing that the universe will handle them if needed. But there's another aspect to this process too. Another thing for which Libras are known is hemming and hawing and then finally getting so frustrated with all the overthinking that they do something entirely at odds with what they really want, just to move already. And then ultimately they aren't happy with the results. Osprey are, as we just talked about, notably successful hunters, and a lot of that has to do with patience. They watch and wait and hover. And at the exact right moment, they dive. We can pursue what we want with every piece of our passionate little hearts and still make room for patience with delays. Timing really is everything, guys. An action that might be right one moment may be absolutely wrong the next, and vice versa. Osprey people are intended to become masters of right timing, acting from a place of calm knowing, not feelings of being rushed or pressured. When action is warranted, they will jump in with everything that they have and they will move fast. But when it is not, they will wait serenely. This is not an easy lesson to learn, and so Osprey people tend to have a history of having rushed decisions and paid for them. Eventually, they learn to trust what genuinely feels right rather than what panic would have them do. And so Osprey not only teaches patience, but when things aren't moving as fast as we would like, it teaches us to identify those features of the situation which can be changed in order to streamline things, as it were. So think of Osprey repositioning its fish in mid-flight to cut down on drag. If you aren't already, Osprey will teach you to become a model of organization and efficiency, the person who effortlessly identifies all the time, energy, and money wasters in their own lives and in the organizations with whom they work, and then makes changes. Regarding those strong wings and oiled feathers, which help it dive and lift back into the air, and the nostrils that open and close to keep out water. This is where our air and water balance really shines. And we're going to bring astrology back to the party for a few minutes. This is a creature that's made to dive, but not to live in the water. What we're really looking at here are people who make great counselors and therapists, whether of the Western psychology variety, the spiritual variety, or that lovely person at your grocery store who always makes you feel better. So we can also include teachers here. Air is our element of rational thought, while water is our element of feeling and emotion. As we said, Libra, our air sign, likes to analyze things. Cancer, which is our water sign, is a very deep feeler. So Osprey people can help others approach their emotions rationally, teaching them to understand and work with their feelings in conscious ways rather than being subsumed or victimized by them. In the Osprey person themselves, this means that they can dive in to a person's emotional field without drowning in it. This is absolutely vital for a person to function as a healthy counselor. While I'm not an Osprey person, I do have Libra and Cancer in strong combination in my chart. And I used to tell my clients that while I was 100% with them and for them during their session, after their session, they ceased to exist to me until they made another appointment. I literally committed to no longer feeling about them. So they might cross my mind on occasion, but I wasn't going to ruminate. When they made another appointment, there they were again. So this really allowed me to live my own life and to walk away from my sessions feeling energized rather than leaving pieces of my energetic self hooked into my clients and vice versa, which is how you wind up feeling really drained. Therapists that get bogged down worrying about their clients' issues have short shelf lives. This is really critical. And there's likely to be some big learning experiences here for Osprey folks who want to be counselors. Osprey that go after fish that are too heavy for them to lift often become entangled with that fish and drown. If you become entangled with someone emotionally, they will suck you under. Part of being an Osprey person is learning to use that excellent eyesight, which we can relate here to seeing people with unbiased clarity, to determine if, one, another person really wants to heal. Not everyone does, no matter what they say. And if they do, if you can actually help them, or if their issues are beyond the scope of your experience or ability. It can be tough to let go of our pride here. And more, it can be tough to trust that if we don't help them, that the universe will connect them with someone who will, provided they're even supposed to receive help. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes people have to almost drown before they will learn to save themselves, and you have to let them. Osprey will help you learn to accept that you can't help anyone by drowning yourself, and that not everyone actually wants to get out of the water. Also, with regard to the personal emotional health of an Osprey person, that air-water combination in their chart gives them an increasingly balanced, grounded quality as they age. So they're able to face and feel their own feelings without being overcome by them and having those feelings color their whole perspective, because they can detach from their emotions and examine them logically when they wish. This is the difference between I'm having a tough moment and it sucks, but there is something to be learned from it, and this is the worst day in the history of days, in the history of ever, and it will never get better, and life is horrible. Big difference between those two. The one big challenge with this particular air and water combination is that it does often make Osprey people analytical to the point of hindering their creative process. Osprey dive, but they don't swim. These folks may wish to submerge themselves and linger in feelings of creative flow, to just totally let go, and yet simply be unable to do so, or unable to do so for long. The water may call to them, but the air continuously lifts them out or asks them to apply thought to what they often wish would be an entirely intuitive process. My advice here is simply to surrender, guys. Just accept you're a creature of water and air, and you were made this way for a reason. Your finest achievements are unlikely to be expressions of pure emotion or pure intuitive channeling, but a careful merging of creative flow with thought and analysis. I've been told for most of my life that I'm an excellent writer, but that's only because no one sees my first, second, and sometimes third outlines, and then my first, second, third, or 10th draft. I am not even remotely a fluid writer, or artist or musician for that matter. With writing, I get a whole lot of intuitive stuff down on paper in my signature chicken scratch, usually stream of consciousness style, and then I will spend days organizing and editing. I love editing, more I dare say, than I love writing, which can make me want to tear my hair out. So the part of my creative process in which I am legitimately tuned into flow, into water, is small, just as the osprey's plunge into water is a comparatively small but significant part of its own process. So osprey people, especially if they are not engaging their water energies by working with other people's emotions in some way, will tend to have a creative drive that requires expression. Whatever it is, they will enjoy the process the most and be the most successful if they can enjoy applying their analytical abilities to enhance the product. Now, one last bit regarding the osprey person's therapeutic capabilities. Raptor beaks are sharply hooked at the tip and sharp along the edges to help them tear meat into pieces. By extension, these tend to be folks who can shred you to pieces with their words. Raptors also have excellent eyesight. They can see the close-up details as well as the big picture as they soar high above. And this translates into people who, having already assessed the situation, have little patience for waiting for you to understand the situation. They want to get to the heart of the matter, to the meat of the issue. And so they will tell it like it is, no matter how much it hurts you. Raptor folks can be truly ruthless, and it can feel like they're tearing you apart to get at your insides. In a therapeutic context, we do sometimes need to be painfully direct to get through to people. But if you don't learn how to do so with kindness, you may hurt people more than you help them. Having a totem which is both a raptor and a water hunter, osprey people have the added benefit of all that water energy to help them behave more empathetically towards others. So they'll still tend to be quite direct, sometimes bitingly so, but they develop the capacity for kindness in their delivery. They know what they are saying is likely to hurt you, and they will usually attempt to soften the blow without doing so to such a degree that the hard truth is lost. Now let's move on to the other thing for which osprey are best known, their nesting habits. Osprey nests are large and quite noticeable, and because they use the same nest year after year and continue to add to it, nests only get larger and more conspicuous with time. After a few generations, they can be up to 5 feet in diameter, 2 to 7 feet deep, and weigh over 300 pounds. So this is where we're going to bring astrology back and talk about Cancer for a minute. Cancer's sense of security comes from close emotional ties to their past, to their family, their friends, their possessions, and their homes. So think of the crab and its claws, which are reluctant to let go of what they want. For this reason, Cancers are notorious hoarders. It is so hard for them to part from those things which hold sentimental value for them, and they can amass a truly bizarre collection of items over the years. This is a lot like Osprey, which will add to the nest anything they can carry, from plastic bags to flip-flops to animal fur. With regard to their homes, Osprey folks are fiercely house-proud, with a great deal of effort being spent improving and or enlarging it as time goes on. They need a large and comfortable space, and it should have room for friends and family and the occasional boarder. Often, smaller birds, such as starlings or house sparrows, live in the underside of an osprey's nest because it's so huge. So, ospreys are extremely protective of their nests, but they are also grounded pragmatists. The little birds aren't a threat to them, so they don't waste any energy driving them off. They can all get along. Similarly, osprey don't waste time or energy attempting to protect the area around their nest, as animals do this to defend their food supply. And the osprey's food supply is mobile and usually a distance away from the nest. In the same way, osprey people are usually happy to open their home to well-behaved individuals who won't bother them or disturb their family, and they're quite all right living in neighborhoods with other people, provided those other people can be trusted around their children. Though some osprey nests are solitary, in the right conditions, osprey nest in colonies and hunt in groups. And so osprey people aren't over-the-top social butterflies, but nor are they hermits. They can enjoy working with others provided they have a comfortable, safe-feeling home to return to afterwards. Now, some osprey populations migrate, and some don't. It depends on whether the shallow water freezes at their nest site each year. But they do still leave the nest site at the end of the breeding season to hunt elsewhere. When breeding season arrives, the male osprey tends to arrive at the nest first, and then he'll put on an aerial display, staking out his claim to the nest and advertising for a mate. Osprey are generally monogamous, meaning they mate for life, but they will find another partner if one dies. So the aerial display is both to impress his last mate, assuming she's coming back, or to attract a new one if needed, and he'll do this for several days in anticipation of the female's arrival. So, called the sky dance, there are a lot of alternations between hovering and diving, usually while carrying a fish or nesting material and screaming really loudly. While the display is important to make sure that other birds who might try to take the nest instead back off, it's equally important in that it demonstrates to the female that, one, he's a strong, healthy birdie who would therefore make great babies, and two, he's an apt provider. Osprey cannot parent alone. It is impossible to brood and guard the chicks while simultaneously hunting for sufficient food. The female needs to be assured that if she makes baby birdies with this guy, that he'll be able to provide for them when she can't leave the nest. Here again is where we find the Libra dynamic. Libra is about sharing, so often compromising with others, and partnership. It's always looking for its soulmate. Osprey folks have a deep drive to find a committed partner, just as most Libras do. On the other hand, it's important to keep in mind that Libra can also have a devil of a time committing, because it's always comparing one person to another. Remember the overthinking? If there's more than one person available, they may spend so much time comparing each person's qualities and trying to pick a winner that their prospective partners get tired of waiting and give up and leave. Or they decide to try out relationships with both, and this doesn't work out either. In osprey relationships, the male spends a significant part of his courtship bringing fish to the female, and females who are given more fish are markedly more receptive to breeding. When she's hungry, she'll beg for food from her mate, and if he doesn't provide, she might just hook up with the cute male next door who will. For this reason, it's believed that osprey males protect their paternity by feeding their females. And as a funny side note here, I would wholeheartedly, seriously, expect osprey folks to have food as one of their love languages. So they would either enjoy grocery shopping, cooking, or taking their partner out to eat, or being the recipient of a meal or snack from their partner. It'd be one of the ways they feel most loved. So let's talk a bit about some traits unique to each gender. Now, I'm going to use the term osprey male to indicate that you personally resonate with osprey male's way of being, and the same for osprey female. I'm also going to stick with he, she pronouns to minimize any confusion to which energies are represented by which gender. This is solely for ease of explanation and does not exclude those of you who resonate with both. So you can resonate with either gender, no matter your biological sex, or with both at different stages of your life. So if you're an osprey person and you resonate with the male of the species, you'll tend to find that your relationships often make you feel pressured to prove yourself, but that part of you thrives on this. You enjoy being appreciated for your strength or fitness and or admired for your ability to provide. If you resonate with osprey female, you yourself will tend to find that you need to be dramatically assured and reassured of your potential mate's capacity to be a provider and a good parent before you'll commit. This is going to be a major concern about which you ruminate all the time. There's also likely to be a lot of giving and receiving of gifts here and other physical shows of love. Male osprey bring nesting material to the female as part of courtship also, and sometimes he's so enthusiastic about the process that he brings so many sticks that he buries her in the nest. And so osprey male folks are generous givers on the whole and really enjoy big shows of love. I wouldn't overall associate osprey with Leo, but the whole giving-receiving dynamic here is very much a Leo thing. Ospreys don't just bring their partner one stick, they bring them all the sticks. And Leos don't just give you one rose, they bring you the whole flower shop if they can afford it. Leos love showing their affections in big dramatic ways, though they definitely expect a thank you. And they love to be shown love in big dramatic ways. They really need to feel as though the other person is treating them like a king or queen. So let's go back to the Libra aspect of these relationships in which multiple partners are involved. When an osprey male thinks he can provide for two nests at the same time, usually because they're in close proximity, the first nest is typically a lot less or more successful than the first. The second female may not receive sufficient food to be convinced to mate with him. There may not be enough food for her to produce eggs. She may need to leave the nest to hunt for her own food, and so the eggs fail. Or she may get so fed up with his absenteeism that she mates with another bird and the eggs in the nest aren't his. Folks who resonate with the osprey male can get a little carried away with the thrill of romance and may attempt to woo two partners at once. They might enjoy being praised and rewarded for their talents or abilities, a la that, look at what a great specimen and provider I am, the sky dance. Or they may be so in love with the idea of family that afraid they won't have one if they limit themselves to just one partner. They figure they better give it a shot with two. Also, the female demonstrates her appreciation of all the food and nesting material with sex. So you might simply be enjoying getting it on with more than one partner. The difficulty is that at the end of the day, it's tough to provide adequately for more than one person. And female osprey folks by extension are jealous lovers. This is also a bit Leo-like. Leo wants to be king, or in this case, queen. And the person who gets all the attention and all the sticks and all the fish should be the queen. She's not going to put up with a guy who isn't devoted entirely to her. But really, guys, why should she? After all, if she's going to be stuck sitting on the kids every moment for a while, she can't go out and get food or repair the nest when needed. So she needs to be sure that your attention is on her and her alone. A mate's seemingly needy behavior can be interpreted as controlling or petty, but at its heart, they may be demanding your attention because they're legitimately concerned about their security and that of the children. Security you made them think you were going to give them. If you're giving to someone else, you might fall short providing for them. And again, this works both ways. These days, I have a lot of friends where the gal is the one with a full-time job and the guy stays home with kiddos. So, long story short, Osprey male people stick with one partner and one family, or you risk losing both. Now, the other issue here is that when the female osprey gets fed up because she isn't being sufficiently fed, no pun intended, she may beg food from another male, and as a result, the eggs in the nest may not be her mates. She too wants a family, and this is predicated on her mates being a good provider. But when a male osprey returns to the nest he shares with his mate and finds eggs that he thinks aren't his, he will do his darndest to push them over the side of the nest, destroying them. And he frequently succeeds. So there's often a struggle as the two birds try to agree which eggs to accept and incubate. Female osprey folks, if you're serious about your mate, let him know you're feeling neglected before you go seeking attention elsewhere. If he still neglects you, you need another mate. If you stay with him and wind up with kids that aren't his, this is likely to be a really, really big, long-standing point of contention between you, and ultimately it will negatively affect the children. Guys, if you want to guarantee that the kids are yours, you need to show your partner that you will always be there for her by being present and making her feel safe and special in big ways. Don't just assume she knows you care. Okay, so now that all the kinks have been worked out and the eggs have been accepted and incubation has begun, osprey are a fantastic parenting team. The female is primarily responsible for incubation, leaving the eggs only so that she can eat the fish her mate brings her, during which time the male takes over sitting on the eggs. For the first 10 days after the eggs hatch, they are brooded exclusively by mom, who huddles with the chicks to regulate their body temperature, as they can't yet do it on their own. After brooding, she continues to protect them by shielding them with her wings from predators or the weather. For the first 6 weeks, Dad is the sole hunter, and he stays very, very busy feeding Mom and the babies. After 6 weeks, Mom starts hunting again as well, alternating with Dad. Both parents are extremely protective of their chicks, using their beaks and talons to violently defend the nest if needed. But their parenting really shines in a couple of less typical ways. First, chicks hatch in the order in which they are laid, and since they grow really fast, the first chick is usually the biggest and the strongest. Like other raptors, the parents will tend to feed the biggest chick to satiation, then move on to the next biggest, and so on. This guarantees that if the food supply is low, at least one chick should make it to adulthood, but it comes at the cost of the smaller chicks who often starve and die as a result. This can happen even when there's sufficient food and bigger chicks are bullies who hog all the fish. This is called brood reduction, and again, it's just what raptors do. However, where osprey differ is that when there is sufficient food, they have sometimes been observed throwing the rules out the window and feeding the smallest chick first, enabling it to compete with its older, larger brothers and sisters. This is a really big deal, guys. This indicates a level of awareness and love for each child that you honestly don't tend to find in the wild, where ensuring the survival of one's DNA is the name of the game. On top of this, cannibalism is really common in raptor chicks. The larger chicks will literally eat the smaller, weaker ones when food is scarce. This doesn't happen in osprey nests either. Chicks definitely compete for food, and one chick may die as a result of that competition, but they don't actually eat the unfortunate little guy. Osprey even continue parenting when migration begins. The female will often leave the nest with her new fledglings, providing guidance for part of the way until the kids are truly ready to hunt on their own, while the male will stay at the nest with any of the chicks who aren't quite ready to take care of themselves. He'll wait until they've fledged and can feed themselves before heading off to his migration destination. So what we really have here is folks who tend to, 1, have uncommonly good relationships with their siblings, And two, even if they were not fortunate enough to come from such a loving, affectionate family themselves, though they are more likely to have been blessed with that as well, they tend to grow up to become exceptional parents, the kind who truly see and value each individual child for who they are and who make time to give them the attention they need. Osprey really represent the highest expression of Cancer, which is the traditional sign of the family. These folks are devoted caregivers, demonstrative in their affections, and really truly want everyone they care for to feel safe and happy. The drawback here is that Cancer has such a deep longing to share love with others that they're always seeking someone to mother or someone to mother them. With Osprey, we're more likely to see the former. When an Osprey nest fails, the parents don't just relax for the rest of the season. They immediately get started on another nest, appropriately named a frustration airy. So they're ready to go for the next season. These guys are super nurturers. So if Osprey folks don't have kids, those mothering energies have to go somewhere. If they aren't mothering their own children, it's other family members, students, people in the community, animals, work subordinates, whatever and whoever needs love. If they aren't careful, as we talked about earlier, they can be therapists or teachers who get hooked into relationships with their clients or students in which they attempt to nurture them outside of professional time. These guys need to nurture someone. I am no exception here. I have Venus in Cancer, so the way I tend to interact with people is to nurture them. I don't necessarily want to do this on a conscious level, but it's my default setting. And if I don't really make an effort to rein in my natural impulses, I wind up exhausted with all the relationships I've created with people who want love and attention and support. So it's always fan-freaking-tastic to meet people who clearly do not need or want nurturing. I used to try to automatically nurture these people too, before I knew any better. Now I know not to try, and I love being able to have fun with people with whom I can just be myself and not a good example or a source of support. Osprey folks really need to make an effort to develop relationships with people who don't need care or mothering so that they can remember who they are apart from their nurturing tendencies. And this usually begins with the tough act of accepting that there's only one of them and they can't nurture everyone without destroying themselves. One can either nurture a limited number of people and keep one's health and sanity intact, or one can try to nurture everyone who needs it and lose both in short order. On the other hand, an Osprey person who's feeling empty or unsatisfied is often dealing with a lack of people or animals to mother and or teach. So this is where I recommend looking at volunteer opportunities in your area and reaching out to an organization that fits your interests. This could be playing with shelter dogs who need to be socialized, becoming a foster parent or mentor, reading books to kids at the library, whatever. It could also signify that your career isn't right for you and should be shifted in the direction of something that allows you to help others feel loved. So I hope this has answered all of your guys' Osprey questions. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Cheers!